welcome back to Reimagine. Here we are in our 9th iteration of this conference. The theme for this conference being the game of chains, looking at all the different amazing projects out there in the ecosystem, how they're developing and how the crypto ecosystem as a whole really is developing. With an audience of people from across the world, it's really important to understand how the crypto world and the crypto developments fit people in every context, from the developed world, the developing world, everything in between, from enterprise to small business to individual retail users. We really want to try and understand how this ecosystem growth can be so impactful across the crypto and blockchain space. So now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome a guest who I think exemplifies that sort of ecosystem development, putting that plumbing in place. So one day, blockchain will not be something that people have to be afraid of or really even think too hard about, I think would be fair to say. So I'd like to welcome Matthew Gould, founder and CEO of Unstoppable Domains. Matthew, firstly, thanks so much for being with us.
Very happy to be here.
All right, so Matthew, just to kick things off, and I'll give you a chance to sort of, state the state of the industry and the state of where you see things right now. Unstoppable Domains, recent partnerships with Brave and with Opera, you're growing that ecosystem, you're getting those integrations. Where do you see your, growth and development at right now? What would you say are the sort of key takeaways you can say about where Unstoppable Domains really is?
Well, I think we're just about to start being ubiquitous inside the crypto space for sending and receiving cryptocurrency. Actually, today we just had an announcement with several additional partners to make sure that we get blockchain domains into the hands of all crypto users and then eventually all users on the internet. It's been an incredible past 3 years, especially for NFTs in the space. Blockchain domains are NFTs, and we are looking forward to continue to educate people about this new technology and how it can help them improve their interactions online.
A lot of people talk about, amazing growth and, seeing, fantastic metrics. And, while within the crypto world and within the crypto space, I think there can be some very impressive growth. Obviously, our goals in the crypto space, are less humble than that. We're looking to break into the mainstream. We're looking to get the next billion people, involved in the space. I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't have numbers at hand, but sort of, what are your growth metrics you're looking at right now, and how close are you to hitting that, mainstream tipping point where I can turn to my mother, my grandmother, my whomever, and they're gonna, know about what your product is, if maybe not the name of the business?
Yeah, well, we've continued to grow at greater than 500% year over year, I guess, basically across all numbers, and that's since our founding in 2018. We have recently just crossed 800,000 domain names issued. I expect that when we talk to you this time next year, we'll be closer to 5 or 10 million. So continuing on that same trajectory. And then if you just take that trajectory out another 3-4 years, and by the time we get to 100 million or 200 million registered domains in 2023 or 2024, that's about the time that people in your group will start to hear more about blockchain domain NFTs. I will say broadly, though, for the ecosystem, the number of people who are aware of what's happening in crypto, I think the awareness has gone up significantly faster than the day-to-day usage. And that's been very encouraging. I mean, you're seeing celebrities claim their domain names and using their and participating in NFTs. One of my favorite artists, and I have some work for him back here, actually just announced his NFT drop recently this week, and he's a traditional graffiti artist. So I think it's becoming much more mainstream faster than you could imagine, and I'm very excited about the growth that we've been seeing over the past 3 years, and we're actually continuing to project that over the next 3 to 5 years for sure.
Wow, fantastic growth. I want to pull back for a second onto a point just there, because I think it's something that even those who are familiar with Unstoppable Domains and what you guys are doing may not necessarily appreciate. I think it's worth highlighting. When people think of domains traditionally in the Web 2.0 space, you sort of buy a name and pay a monthly subscription, right? In essence, it's renting. You guys are different. Just help break that down for our audience a little bit about what that really means.
So one of the big things about crypto is ownership. Like, people are really concerned about owning and controlling their own data and the things and their digital items that they have online. So with blockchain domain names, like you mentioned, there are no renewal fees. Like, once you buy a domain name from Unstoppable Domains, you own it forever. It's your property. And this is a huge difference from the traditional internet, where basically everything you interact with now you're renting. Everything's a version of a SaaS product. You have these fees that come at you every year, and you don't really feel like you're getting any additional value on those on that additional year that you're paying for. So we think this changes the internet, and it starts with domain names and making it easier to send and receive cryptocurrency or look up data about individuals. And then eventually it evolves to a place where you have much more control over all the content that you're creating online.
Yeah, an amazing sort of paradigm shift there, right? Of the digital space being a place where you can come and spend time versus being a place where you come and own a piece, of the digital world. I mean, and I guess, as you say, that's the crypto ethos, writ large. But that really is something in Unstoppable Domains that you aim to make accessible. And I guess, I mean, what interests me so much is, we're still at the stage where so much architecture and so much fundamental plumbing of the crypto ecosystem and the sort of Web 3.0 ecosystem is still being developed. But, obviously the goal of most companies, and I think you guys exemplify that well, as I said in my intro, is to make, blockchain in many ways, if not completely invisible, at least a lot less present in the sort of, digital ownership project. How do you feel you guys are achieving that goal, and do you think you can get it to the point where it's as comfortable or more comfortable than the existing Web 2.0 architecture that people are pretty comfortable with at this stage?
Yeah, well, I would say specifically we're working as the missing UX layer, right? And then you're just saying people in crypto really want to hide the complexity of interacting with cryptocurrency from everyday users, because they really don't need to know that. And one of the first things you do if you buy some Bitcoin or you try to send some cryptocurrency is you'll notice that you have to send it to and from these very complex hex addresses, and they're like 40 characters long. And it's essentially like a bank account number. It's super long, or an IP address from the 1990s. You can remember those. And Unstoppable Domains is building naming services, these domain naming services, for people to associate their cryptocurrency addresses. That's the very first use case for these. So instead of having to send money to a very long cryptocurrency address, or copying and pasting it, or trying to chase that down, you can actually just send money to Asher.crypto, as an example. And that would be significantly easier than these hex addresses. And it's also a lot less scary. If you've ever sent cryptocurrency, the first time you do it, you're like, did I get the address right? Am I sending it to the right place? And it's little things like this that you stack on top of each other that will make the user experience, 10%, 20% easier. That is going to help us get the next, billion users onto crypto.
We spoke about some stats. You said, over 500% year-on-year growth. That's fantastic. And obviously, it's that sort of threshold idea, as you hit the next, sort of level of people, you go from the engineers to the students to the speculators or whatever, you start to hit these new waves of people coming on board and gaining awareness of your product or the crypto industry as a whole. But, within those statistics and just sort of in your even anecdotal experience, delving down, are we at the stage where sort of the non-tech savvy people are starting to be able to use either your product or generally crypto products, that exist out there? I mean, are you seeing any of that where you're getting the less crypto and tech savvy people coming on board?
So we're starting to see the first pieces of this happen. And I would actually say one of the big things that happened this past year in the market was a huge increase in the usage of like dollar-backed coins, these stable coins that happened this past year. And that makes a lot of sense to normal people that hey, I have dollars in my wallet and they're paper, but I have dollars in the bank account and they're digital. Why can't I have an easy to use digital dollar on my cell phone that I can send around? And I actually think that that's brought in a lot of much more normal users, at least from what we're seeing. And they're connecting their blockchain domains up to these addresses to send and receive cryptocurrency payments more easily between themselves. And we actually just announced today that we're working with Circle to get blockchain domain names in for their for payments for people to send. And I think cross-border payments have always been a really good use case for cryptocurrency, because it's such a pain to send money, with a wire transfer, or even just sending it state to state or sending it from one phone to another. And this has really kind of accelerated. So I would say we're still very early. And for people out there who think, oh, I missed it, I didn't buy Bitcoin at $1, it's too late for me. I would say that no, actually, we're still maybe in the second or third inning of this game, and we've got an entire 5 to 10 years to onboard people. The amount of people that are learning is also, I would say, at an all-time high, at least from what we're seeing in terms of our customer support teams. Just the sheer number of people who are coming into the space for the first time, seeking to learn more about cryptocurrency, listening to media like yourself or subscribing to other places where they can get content about crypto to educate themselves is happening. But that education takes several years. My dad still has his AOL account from 25 years ago. And so some people are slower than others, and that's totally fine. And so I do think that we're still early. We are seeing some hair on fire use cases start to gain a lot of traction. And I think it's very positive for the future.
Really positive for the future. And, you hit on a good point there in regards to, there's cross-border payments. And I think the remittances space has always been one that has been, such a potential growth space in the crypto industry, and something that, people do talk about, but perhaps sometimes not enough. Because, I always think in the developed world in general, there's not such a demand, such a need for a lot of the services necessarily being offered by the crypto world yet, or the blockchain space yet. And while people could benefit from them, they also say, well, the system I have is working for better or worse. If it ain't broke, why fix it? Now, in a lot of the developing world, that's simply not the case. The system is broken and in dire need of fixing. And as we all know, necessity is the mother of invention. Are you seeing that sort of uptake there? Is it mostly in the developed world? Is the developing world coming on board with this, as with so many other elements of the crypto space?
Well, I would say that I think it is the more developed countries that are leading the technology innovation, but then it's actually the up and coming countries that are adopting it, and they're leapfrogging our traditional system. So like the innovation is still coming out of places like San Francisco in the US, but you're seeing it almost instantly because everyone's remote, everything's super digital now, and you're seeing it being taken up in Latin America or Africa much quicker than you expect otherwise. I actually think, just to clarify a point, there's huge amounts of reason. There's huge opportunity even within the United States for these products, because something like 10% of people in this country don't have a bank account. And, you think about it, that's kind of crazy. And it's actually, they don't have time to go down to the local bank branch and set something up, or maybe they don't have the minimum deposit amount for $500 to set up a checking account. They don't have access to these financial products. And actually, just this past week, I think they had hearings in the U.S. Congress. I think Senator Warren was one of the people who participated, about enabling more people to have direct access to digital dollars on a blockchain. So I think it's happening here just as much as other places. And it's really impressive how many people could help across all sorts of different sections. It's really a transformative technology.
Yeah, I mean, and isn't that amazing that we're talking about a space where, to set up a bank account, you might need a $500 minimum deposit, and yet to buy the most basic of smartphones out there, I mean, the cost is exorbitantly low. I was in Mexico recently and saw that you could buy the most basic smartphone, but still full internet connectivity and capability. We're talking for, I think it was something like 13, 15 US dollars. Something to that effect, and the fact that technology is more accessible than the legacy banking system surely says something about, the growth potential and the state of the financial world as we have it right now.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And it's weird that we've had digital banking for, I don't know, 70 years since they implemented Swift. I don't even know how long, maybe 50 years. It's been a long time, but it just really hasn't evolved to work with modern smartphone technology or modern consumer technology. It hasn't kept up with the pace of the times. And again, we're seeing the innovation happen in the crypto space for all these financial applications. And it's being created here it's being created in these developed countries, but we are seeing it basically just spreading across the world. And I expect there to be plenty of use cases for people to have easier access to financial products. And I think there's a huge opportunity, not just for crypto companies, but also, fintech companies saw PayPal has enabled the purchase of cryptocurrency inside their application, and I think you're going to see that continue through a lot more of those fintech apps as well.
Now, we talked about the technological benefits. We've talked about, the usability benefits and whatnot. But there is one side of this we haven't really yet discussed, which I think it would be remiss for me not to mention, which is, of course, some of the potential speculative nature of, domain purchasing and capability. As you say, the domains you're putting out there are in themselves actually NFTs, and there is potential, as with anything in the NFT space, for good returns, speculative returns or otherwise. What do you make of that market? Do you see it as a positive on the whole? Do you see the risk of hype and sort of a misalignment of what you're intending to serve and how people are using it, or is that just all part of the natural market equilibrium?
Well, I think it's certainly natural. Investment leads to growth and development of new products and new industries. I think that's part of it. But we actually had a post out earlier this year in March talking about the NFT bubble at the time. And for people who are maybe not as deep into the space, there was a huge amount of hype earlier this year, specifically around art on the blockchain, art NFTs. And I think Beeple sold a picture for $60 million plus, one of his artworks through Christie's auction house. Yep. I had to check. And so that's incredible. But it was also the very top of the market. And if you actually look back just 2 or 3 months ago, you can see that a lot of the demand for these specifically NFT art projects has dropped significantly across the space. And that happens. Every now and then people are going to get overexcited. I actually think that it was good to have a little bit of cooling off here on the NFT space. And we're starting to see more and more focus on actual utility for these blockchain domain NFTs and digital assets. So, at Unstoppable Domains, we're still seeing continued progress quarter over quarter, even given the pullback in the overall market for art NFTs. So yeah, some sectors are going to get hot sometimes and overinvested. I definitely tell people out there, do your own research and be careful. Don't put in more money than you can afford to lose. You hear all these things all the time, but just be mindful of what you're doing. And another thing that I like to say is if you're in this to learn, it's great, right? Because you can get in and learn about art on digital assets for art or for blockchain domain names, and it's $20 or $40 to get started. So if you're here for the education to learn more about the space, there's always a way to get started that is completely outside of any type of investment consideration.
Absolutely, but I think we can't ignore the potential of those investment considerations as well. Whether we consider the comparisons to the dot-com bubble of the early 2000s, in which there was a sort of a mania and then obviously a pullback, or even in a perhaps more constructive manner, you have the Michael Saylors of the world, who famously, he sold the voice.com domain for $30 million not so long ago. And he was sort of insightful enough to see the potential, speculative capacity of buying a lot of these, generic domains that would later become incredibly valuable. Surely there must be a certain percentage of the ecosystem that sees and looks for that, for better or for worse. I'm not to diminish that, as a valuable part of any ecosystem in any market.
Yeah, there's always going to be demand for limited things like domain names. Make sure you get your name or your business name or whatever it is that you're looking for. And we are trying to be mindful of existing brands. For instance, we have set aside domains for trademark holders. We're trying to prevent speculation and squatting as much as possible on our end, because we don't want people to take advantage of other people. For instance, we don't want someone to go and pick up the domain name for like the president of the United States or something, and then just extort that person. So we're trying to do our best on our end to tap down on speculation where we can, remind people that to take the longer view on where this is going and to be responsible.
It's interesting to hear about you say that. Without any judgment on the matter, but many people would say in a sort of decentralized crypto free market, people should have the right to get that early adopter bonus and and squat on whatever they please.
Well, so we do reward our users, and actually today we just did a promotional credit drop for everyone who has purchased a domain name for us before. So people who bought domain names from us earlier have received hundreds of dollars in promotional credits to go and buy another domain on maybe a new extension that has been released. And so we are trying to mimic that early adopter mentality that you have in crypto, because I think that's part of the crypto ethos. Like if you're early onto a project, then you as the consumer should benefit, and I think that's great. Like being able to reward users for their participation in helping your company be successful is something that Unstoppable Domains definitely is encouraging with our users. And just to put some numbers on it, the airdrop that we did this morning was $100 million. So I'm not talking about small amounts of money. So we
Certainly
are,
not.
yeah. So we're trying to reward our customers as best we can for being early. And I was an early crypto adopter myself. I understand that, and we are doing, we're doing everything we can to make sure that those people feel like we have their best interest as we move forward. And we're very thankful for their participation in our communities, helping provide feedback on how we can improve the product, and helping to get the word out about this new technology and how it can make sending and receiving crypto payments so much easier for normal people.
So, I want to take this excuse to sort of turn to the wider market as a whole. As you mentioned, you were an early crypto adopter and saw some of that early writing on the wall. And I guess I want to ask, as someone who's been in the space a while, with so much fresh blood, let's say, coming into the market, and so many enthusiastic, but perhaps what's the politest way to put this, less well-informed individuals coming into the market. What do you see as the overall state of the crypto space? Do you think that the sort of hype we've been seeing over the last few months, even though at the time of filming it seems to have tempered somewhat, is healthy? Do you think there is a rebalancing that needs to be had in the market? And as someone who's been around for a while, what do you think of the latest wave of investors? Do you think that they're ready to come on board with crypto in the way that they have?
I definitely think we saw a little bit of excessive enthusiasm in Q1 of this year. And then we have seen the market come off 30 or 40%. I think it may even have gone down as much as 50 or 60 at one point. And I think that was overall healthy for people. If you take a longer time horizon for these things, I think with Bitcoin, if you do any 5-year holding period, then you're going to be in a good situation. And that's not financial advice, just historical looking at the charts. And so I do think some cycles happen. People get over enthusiastic about what's happening in the market. I actually do think it's good when it cools off. I think the best time to get into the space is times like now, when we've just come off of a market high earlier this year. It's a great time to learn. There's no substitute for putting in the work and putting the time in to learn about the space. And the earlier you do it, the better. Because when I first got involved, I actually got very excited about Bitcoin for the first time during the 2013 bubble, and people may remember that. And so these type of investment cycles bring new people into the space, and the important thing is to stay here and learn, because that's since 2013 we've seen 100x growth over the past 8 years, and I think that looking forward in this decade, you're going to see another 100x growth between now and 2031.
Another 100x growth, certainly comes off as amazing. But I guess then the potential drawback to that, the potential holdback, could be from a regulatory perspective, and that's something that I think we see so much concern about, whether real, imagined, or otherwise. In the Unstoppable Domains corner of the crypto market, is that something that you face? Have you had to come up against any regulatory hurdles, and how do you deal with them when you do?
Yeah, so regulators are definitely interested, I would say, across crypto. The two new things that have happened in crypto have been this decentralized finance, DeFi movement in the past 12 months, and then this non-NFT, which has been mostly art movement. And I would say the two different areas of concern around regulation there is for the art, the NFTs and art, all that type of stuff. They're going to start checking in on source of funds for purchases for money laundering reasons. You've seen things here in the United States where they say for crypto transactions greater than $10,000, then you're going to have to report that and just like you would do with any other cash transaction. And I think that's going to come into effect end of 2022. So the industry has 18 months to kind of get prepared for that. There are already service providers who are working on solutions, I think that's going to be relatively lightweight and straightforward because you already do it for regular banking. On the decentralized finance, yet to be determined, there's a lot of discussion that's going on in there because the regulation is what makes things super expensive. And so if you have excessive regulation that makes financial products too expensive so that consumers can't get them, and then you have these crypto products that are light on regulation and now they're cheap enough for regular people to use them all the time, the discussion is like, how much regulation do you want to add in here? What's the public benefit, versus public cost? So I think that's going to be a little bit harder. I do expect people to move slow, though. Honestly, the education that people have been getting on crypto and people in power and politicians have been seeking out this information, it's way different than it was back in 2013, 2014, 2015. It used to be that when you said Bitcoin 10 years ago, everyone just accused you of doing something illegal. And now when you say Bitcoin, everyone accuses you of being a hedge fund manager. And that's a huge, that's a huge change in the industry, right? Over that time period. And that just shows you how the space has evolved. And so, yes, there's going to be regulation. I don't think it's going to be heavy. I think we learned during the internet growth phase, at least here in the United States, that if we kind of let the industry develop, they will build best practices. No one is working in this industry to try to do something nefarious. Like, you don't get up and go to work and put in the 40 or 50 hours a week unless you believe in what you're doing and you think it can help people. And it's hard, to be perfectly honest. There are plenty of other things that people could be doing that would be easier. So coming up, the people who are building in this space are aware of those concerns and working with regulators to educate them. And hopefully we'll get a light touch. I mean, fingers crossed, I do think that's best for everybody.
Matthew, I think I'd have to sort of disagree with you on one point there, which is you say there's people aren't out there looking to be nefarious in this space. And I think that those founders, those innovators, those builders who are in the sunlight, working with regulators and in, jurisdictions where, there is regulation and is oversight to some degree, I think I would agree that those people are out there trying to do the right thing, and maybe they make up the majority. Maybe they even make up the vast majority. But surely, as we've all of us who've been in this space for, longer than a couple of months would be all too aware, is that there are plenty of bad actors out there that are looking to, create a lot, anything from your OneCoin level, Ponzi schemes to right down to just, the simple, send us 1 Bitcoin and we'll send you back 2 sort of, opportunistic scammers. There are plenty of people out there who are looking to skirt regulations, money launder, do whatever else. And surely we need to, as an industry, be aware of that and think about how we interact with one another with those people in mind.
Oh yeah, I just consider that the cost of doing business. I mean, if you look at the data, it's shown that it's basically the same as any finance industry in terms of the level of bad actors. And you as a business, that's just a cost of doing business, is trying to track those things down and make them less. And then as an industry, I would say people are working hard to help notify users about these types of scams. One of the ones that I really liked is you've seen exchanges recently, if you're trying to send cryptocurrency to a known scammer, because this is on the blockchain and it's all public, which makes it a lot easier to view. They actually have told you, like, hey, we actually have information that this is not a great place to send your money. And they tell you before you send it, right? And when I'm handing somebody cash, there's nobody there to give me any kind of information about that. So there's a level of transparency that happens on the blockchain. Now, the user still has full control. Like if you want to send your money to a scam, then you can, right? No one can stop you.
It's your right.
Right, exactly. But like I think we're underestimating the amount of tools that can be added and the types of information that we can provide to people, given these programmable open systems for interacting with money. And I think they'll be quite helpful over time. So yeah, I mean, agreed. There's always something, but I think that's very typical.
Does Unstoppable Domains have any policy in that regard? If you find out that a particular domain is being utilized by a known scammer, do you have any power or capability to retract their access or take control or put warnings up or any such nature?
So when somebody owns their blockchain domain, it is theirs. And so they can program or do whatever they want with it. Now, the applications that are interacting with blockchain domain names, like I just mentioned, exchanges here for sending cryptocurrency addresses, they actively monitor these things for their own compliance reasons. And they can determine themselves if this is something that they should alert their users to. And that's basically how it's working out, is that they're trying to put that type of those types of controls in place at the application level. And honestly, I think that's where they belong.
So you guys wouldn't be involved in any sort of blacklisting or making exchanges aware of any particular bad actors if you were to become aware of them?
Making someone aware is different than actively creating barriers for those individuals who own those domain names. So on the blockchain system itself, once you own it, it's yours, so you can do what you want with it. But in terms of like cooperating with authorities, right? Like, if there's information that's needed about, we'll do what we need to on that side. So inside of our own application, for instance, we do have some tools that help us to prevent the upload of illicit material here in the United States. We are a US-based company. And so we follow all the regulations and guidelines that we need to for our local jurisdiction. And we'll continue to do that on a going forward basis. Again, this doesn't affect the ownership of these domain names for these individuals. And if the rules in their countries are different, they can do what they would like to over there. At the protocol level, these are blockchain assets. And just like Bitcoin, you own it, it's yours, it's your private key. But at the application level, like I was saying earlier, exchanges, et cetera, there's all sorts of monitoring. And I think that's good because it's much more flexible as rules change and regulations changes. It's easier to update at the application layer than it is at the protocol layer.
Certainly, absolutely. Those points of contact or those gatekeepers along the way can be utilized for various roles and responsibilities. So, Matthew, sort of coming to a sort of head here and sort of thinking about, the future, thinking about trends. I always like to sort of mull ahead what people think where the industry will head. And I think, here we are mid 2021. I think it's an interesting time because we've got this sort of optimism in the air of, things are reopening. COVID seems to be, I won't say necessarily under control everywhere because it depends where you are in the world, but at least becoming more controllable, and there's a certain sense of optimism as to what the future might hold. When it comes to the crypto space, any trends in particular you're watching? Will the NFT hype kick back up, or are we on to the next thing already? Is DeFi the space to watch? Regulations? What are you looking out for?
Well, I have an overall positive view on all of the things that you just mentioned, and I think they will all continue to grow at a really fast clip. Specific to things that I'm focused on, I'm very interested about the bring your own data movement, with consumers having much more control over their digital lives and what they own. It's basically the social dilemma where, if people have seen that movie, it talks about how these large companies like YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, et cetera, you create on their platforms, but you don't get to own anything or have any control over how it's displayed. You get no money for creating that content, right? And that's really what people are interested in, is getting even more deeply integrated into the way the internet works now, and connecting that back to crypto and blockchain applications. So I think the NFT art space is a very good first example of that, because you can imagine if you are a artist, like you create songs online or you create paintings or whatever, you now have a new way to monetize your content, because you can create a digital version of it and sell it directly to the consumer. You cut out all those middlemen that were taking huge chunks of payments from you, and you're making a lot more money than you were previously. That's just the tip of the iceberg as far as I see it. And there's this huge mountain of data that's created online by everyone. And once we make it much easier for people to assert ownership and control over that, I think it's going to fundamentally change the way that people interact online. I mean, you get what you incentivize. And so if we can create a system of property ownership and property rights online, I think we're going to have a whole new incentive structure. And, we refer to it as the digital industrial revolution. And I think it's going to be exactly that big. You spend 50% of your time during the day staring at a screen, but 50% of your assets are not digital yet. And I think if you fast forward another decade, that's going to flip.
Amazing point. The industry playing catch up, as it were. Getting those assets online, getting that ownership online, all catching up with everything. It's a powerful vision, and I look forward to seeing how it plays out. But Matthew, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I think we hit on some amazing points of where the industry stands, where the industry is going, and some of the great potential we can hit there. I always like to throw the last word to you, out to our audience. Any thoughts, any advice, anything that you think our audience should check out before we wrap up here?
Well, yes. Well, please check out unstoppabledomains.com. Go ahead and grab your piece of the internet. We also have a wonderful podcast at Unstoppable Web where you can follow us there as well. We have over 50 episodes. It's heavily focused on crypto education. I like to tell everyone out there, and this is what I tell my dad, like read about this space, learn about this space. This is going to be as big a shift in the internet as what happened when everyone started moving to the cloud. And I think it's a huge shift for us to start using blockchains with your website interaction. And the sooner you learn it, the more empowered you're going to be to participate and have these user experiences early.
Matthew, thanks so much for giving us that, and for everyone watching, make sure you stick with Reimagine. So many more fantastic interviews still to come.